you guys for joining us this evening. What we hope to do is have an open and honest but a productive conversation. To introduce myself, my name is Jermaine McNair. I am the Mayor's appointee to the Police Community Relations Commission. By profession, I'm a college outreach and enrollment specialist. I have several other titles. I run a local nonprofit called NC Civil. I mentor and do other things, but most of the work that I do revolves around minority communities and at-risk youth. An important topic tonight here, we're going to be discussing policing in communities of color and ways we can improve that. I like to start all of my talks with a reference to my time served in federal prison, and I won't change up the course for this one. I'll start off, and for those who don't know, I served 3 years in the federal prison system for possession of a firearm by a felon. I won't go into my own personal story, but after I first started my sentence, I couldn't believe what had happened to me. It was, I didn't feel like the punishment matched the crime or the day in question, and I just couldn't come to terms with it all. But there's actually a book that I read that helped me understand. Now, by no means had I lived a squeaky clean life, but I just couldn't understand the reciprocity that came back from the system. So there's a book called The Count of Monte Cristo. I don't know if anyone's familiar with the story. Most of us had to read it in high school, but for those who don't know, it's a story about a very naive and innocent man who was framed and sentenced to, I don't know how many years in prison, 20, 30 years in prison. And of course he was upset when he got to prison. He kept screaming, "I'm innocent, I'm innocent, I'm innocent." And the warden finally said to him, the warden looked at him and laughed and said, "Of course you're innocent. This is the place where the innocent people go." And I thought about that, Now, of course, that is initially a reference to the fact that everybody in prison says they're innocent. But I looked at it as a deeper thing, and I said, I reflected on the time that I spent ripping and running through this community right here in West Greenville, running with drug dealers and violent people, and just a part of what I call my friends. It was just everyday culture. But if you ever stopped us, and I'm sure you law enforcement know, if you would ever pull us over and ask us what we were doing, we would say nothing. Or if we were ever arrested, we would tell the story and say, well, most of the stories would start off like, I was just chilling with my friends, and yada, 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 but it's always about doing nothing. And I began to equate doing nothing with being innocent. Because when you don't know what you are doing, that allows you to claim innocence. Now bear with me, I promise you I'm going to connect this. So all those years, I had to realize that those years I spent ripping and running, doing what I considered to be nothing, hanging out with my friends, gambling, shooting dice, drinking, causing mischief here and there. What I did not realize is that what was going on around me was a very large community that was being battered by crime, violence, broken families, dilapidation, property values falling, what we call urban decay. And I had been a role player in that. So, for me, that was a wake-up call, because whether I knew it or not, I was an active role player in a system that was tearing families down and tearing people down and having a negative impact on my community. That was it for me. I promised myself that I would never be innocent again. I would never walk around not knowing the impact of every single thing that I do. I would have, from now on, have purpose to everything I do, and I would work to make things better, to make sure that the impact that I'm having is a positive one on the people around me. I'll tell you why that's important, is because whether you accept the responsibility for your actions or not, your actions still have an impact in a larger system. So even if you claim ignorance, and I believe we're all given a gift of power, That means every action you have, every word you speak, it has an impact on someone. So even if you claim ignorance, your actions are still a part of a larger system. With that being said, I want to get to the larger operating system of mass incarceration. Now, at some point in time in America, I think around the 80s it looks like, we all know that incarcerations just shot up. And most of these incarcerations were taking place in the minority communities. The funny thing about that is, we weren't too many years from Dr. King being shot. The reason why that's relevant is because if African Americans in poor communities were still fighting for their freedom just 15 years ago, and now there's a war on crime that led to a war on drugs that seemed to target minority communities, whether it was individualized or not, it seemed to be systematic. So what it appears, and this is, I'm going to address an elephant in the room, we're going to go ahead and call out racism. Let's get that off the table. Because if that timeline is correct, that means that there has never been a time when the African American community has not been under injury and based on the protection of the law. That means that there has never been a time. If there was a 10-year period, that's not even enough time for us to get the Tar River Plan moving. So let's go ahead and throw racism out there and understand that there's a systematic thing that has taken place in the African American communities, and let's just sit that aside. And let's go back to mass incarceration. And another topic that we have to understand, violence in our communities, because we do know that the minority communities have a high level of violent crimes. This is true, we can get that off the table. There's always been accepted that it is root causes to crime. But I think we have yet to identify one of the missing root causes. One of those root causes of crime, I think we can accept it now, is incarceration. Now what I'm urging is that mass incarceration is a contributor to high crimes. I'll tell you why. The numbers and the statistics all say that the more a community is exposed to incarceration used as, let's just call incarceration a blunt tool. We know we're trying to achieve goals for safer communities. Let's say incarceration is the most blunt tool we can use. I heard someone say, I find it very hard to believe that that tool is appropriately used across the board for everything. I say that to say there's no way that the most blunt form can be the proper use for every situation. But in America, we have run that answer across the table, particularly in our minority communities of higher crime. Now, the effects of that go well beyond loss of income, broken and torn families, and the usual suspects. But it also goes so far as to say that even a person that has not been incarcerated, if that person knows too many people that has been incarcerated, the numbers show that that person will withdraw from the democratic process. That person will not take part in neighborhood associations. That person will not take part in any of the initiatives to better the community. So what happens is those entire communities withdraw from what we all know is the democratic process that we use to make conditions better. So no one in these communities is active in making the communities better. What we will call this is a failure of the state. And when I say I don't mean the state of North Carolina, I mean the state as a government, as the way we set up our society. When it falls, when that society fails, you will always see crime shoot up. And I'll cover that and say why. We as a community, as citizens, we give up our right to privatize violence and we hand that over to law enforcement. And we say that we function under the understanding that if you guys serve, protect, and work for our safer communities and stand up for us, we won't have to worry about retribution, retaliation. We give that power to the state. Whenever that power goes amok or it goes into a negative direction, the people you will find that they will seize that power back. And then they will begin to resort back to privatized violence. Because they don't believe in their minds that somehow the perception has gotten confused and they no longer trust the state to work in their favor. So now they say, I'm going to go out and I'm going to take my own action. If someone wrongs me, I'm not calling the police. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to take part in this. I'm going to go out and protect myself. I have to. That's the way the community functions. So when we look at communities, that even though the crime numbers in America are down, and let's address that as well, because we all know that as that war on drugs and war on crime has increased, and as incarcerations has increased, crime has actually gone down in America. This is true. We're actually seeing, I believe, some of the lowest numbers that we've seen in quite some time in America. But those numbers don't serve well for minority communities, because in those small pockets where the society has failed and the state has failed, crime is still through the roof. So now, a young African-American male is at a higher risk of being a victim of violent crime than any person in the U.S. And that's interesting because we have this view of a victim. And I've done a lot of listening to dialogues about this, trying to collect how to approach it. And I heard one dialogue where they spoke about the common view of a victim. In America, we actually view the victim most commonly as a female. So in our society, we have it geared up that if a female is injured, we're going to respond, make sure that female is okay. But we tend to not, in America, see young minority males who tend to be the perpetrators of crimes as victims, and our system is not so ready to run to their aid with help and services and things of that nature. So what we're talking about today is a collective issue of the community. I also want to remove off the table, if you will, the concept of individual beefs or bad cops or bad criminals in the neighborhood. Let's for a second imagine that in the past 6 years, no young minority had been shot by a law enforcement officer, right or wrong, at all. Let's say the news hadn't sensationalized any incidents. We would still have an issue of mass incarceration in America. So I don't want to take away anyone's individual beefs, but for the purpose of us addressing this as a collective, let's just remove that off the table, because I feel like that sometimes distracts us from working together to deal with this mass incarceration. Right now, maybe everyone knows, maybe everyone does not, but we account for, in America, somewhere close to 50% of the world's incarcerated population. That means that we have more of our citizens in prison than any dictatorship or any nation that we call corrupt. We imprison more of our citizens than anyone. Any other nation, period. We're number one in that. So, for me, this is a call to humanity. Because what I had to learn about my innocence, and in that pledge that I would no longer walk around my community and be aloof and be ignorant to the impact that I had to understand that I was a role player in a larger system. What I want my community members and my brothers and sisters in law enforcement is to understand that as I mature and become more and more of a man, I measure myself by the positive impact I'm able to have in that larger system. There's no way I can mature as a man and not also challenge my brothers and sisters to be aware. Let's acknowledge that when my law enforcement brothers and sisters, when you put on that suit, you are wearing the suit of a system that's not you, but the system that's actually negatively impacted communities for years. Now, just like me, I love being street, I love being black, I love the swag that it gives you, I love the sense of style that we pick up in the minority communities, but I also bear in it the shame for the behaviors and actions of some of my brothers and sisters. I have to wear that as well. So when you step into that suit as a law enforcement officer, we don't want to, just like I don't want to be blamed and judged by the actions or misbehaviors of some of my brothers and sisters, I don't want you to be judged by some of the misbehaviors that have gone on within that system. What I want us to do is understand that, and now let me create an image. Let's look at that system as a vehicle that is running rampant through the streets and mowing people down. You could have never been in that driver's seat, but if you jump in that car today and you're driving it and we see that same car coming down the road, and we know that that car just mowed over 30 people, we're gonna get out of the way. We're not gonna wait for you to say, oh, it's me driving this time, because you are in the vehicle of destruction. Time out, for instance. Let us work together as a community to decide what we can do to make it better. Now I'll introduce my main call to action tonight. It's not for beef, it's for solutions. Through studies I've learned and seen that around the nation there have been efforts to deter crime. Many of those efforts have been post-felony conviction, post-incarceration. I think even in California, they released a mass amount of people out of the system trying to correct incarcerations after the fact. It is my urge that we would do a better job in the hands of law enforcement if we could create more options than incarceration at the point of decision. That means when you encounter a person, you have some discretion and some options of whether or not to arrest, prosecute, go for a felony, but I don't want you to become social workers coming up with your own ideas. I want us as a community to be thinking, what other options can there be? What other alternatives can a law enforcement officer have? If we come together with our own programs, and I'll give a positive example. I'm running over my time, so I need to wrap up. I just want to give a positive example. There are some officers in this building right now, Ms. Paula Sauls, Mr. Ted Sauls, Mr. Richie Williams, I believe I see, Ms. Tina Knox. From the time I've gotten here and expressed my interest in working with young people, these officers and a few others who are not here have always run across young people that they saw could use a little help, and they would send me unofficial emails and say, hey, I picked up a young person last night. He just looks like he needs a little help. I had to pick him up, but he looks like he could use some attention. Could you go find him and reach out to him? And I would do that unofficially. I just want to give that as an example of what the community can do when you work with law enforcement and they're out there in the street. When they run into our young guys and gals who are off track, if we're working with them, we can be in edgewise. So my call to action for tonight is solutions, guys. Let us no longer claim innocence, but let us be active and understand our impact. Thank you so much for being here. We're going to have a presentation for our law enforcement, but not without Ms. Diane Cooley calling the official meeting to order. Thank you so much. My donut. You guys like the donuts?
No, I didn't get it. That was his private.